I have been talking about what sets Hedera apart from the rest. I've been specifically mentioning how efficient Hedera is when it comes to the technology stack that Hedera has behind it. And with the recent Amazon cloud outage that just happened, I feel as if it confirms just how bullish Hedera is even more. And we have to talk about this. We have to address it because it's very important to understand the tech stack if you are investing into these types of projects, because when you invest into Hedera, you're not just investing into, the price chart. Everyone loves to look at the price chart, but realistically speaking, you are investing into a network that has extremely efficient tech built behind it that's going to enable massive use cases. Amazon Cloud runs the world. Majority of websites utilize this for, data processing, and a lot of applications out there also utilize it. So when Amazon Cloud goes down, well, it becomes a massive outage. This affected so much, and almost everything was down throughout the day. It affected social media, gaming, online services, food delivery, streaming, financial products, things like that. And again, even crypto. That's right. When you think about crypto being extremely decentralized, you would probably be thinking, all right, well, Amazon Cloud is down, so it doesn't really matter. Crypto is going to still be up. No. Bitcoin.com News actually put out a post regarding this saying an Amazon Web Services outage affecting Coinbase, Ethereum Layer 2s, and other crypto projects raises an important question. How decentralized are these systems really? And even when we look at Ethereum mainnet statistics, right, we can see the execution layer hosting ISPs. And 27.5% of the hosting ISPs come from Amazon.com alone. So when we think about this, this really just exposed a lot of the key projects, exchanges, and just networks in this space that are reliant on these centralized systems that if they do go down, well, all of a sudden, we could see these networks affected significantly. But the question is, did Hedera go down? And the answer is no. Hedera didn't. In fact, we have over here from Hedera Foundation, marked safe from Amazon Web Services outage. And here we have all systems operational 100%, which we'd love to see. And then, of course, yes, they did link to their decentralization website, which is on their website. You guys can read about this from Brady going back to 2023. Now, Brady did make a post regarding this as well. BM Gentile over on X. We have major AWS cloud outage observed today. We're decentralized in quotation marks because, again, if they are decentralized, they shouldn't be going down during a day like that. Layer 1 and Layer 2 networks with an over-reliance on Amazon Web Services for node ops experienced downtime. And again, Hedera didn't, because when we look at most of the validators that are tapped in on the GC for Hedera, we can see what they are running on. This is a fully decentralized hosting distribution. So there's no massive reliance on, for example, AWS like with Ethereum. Ethereum is reliant on Amazon 27.5%, which is a very significant issue. Now, going back to this screenshot, we also have this screenshot of the other validators, and this is the active validator geographic distribution as well, just around the world. So again, it's not just ISP distribution, it's also geographical distribution as well, which we love to see. And again, this is just proving to you how much more efficient Hedera is. We've always talked about, when we compare Hedera to, for an example, like Ethereum or Bitcoin, the main things that we always compare is, all right, well, transactions per second, average fees, transaction confirmation, energy consumption, things like that, which, by the way, if we're still looking into energy consumption and stuff like that, yes, Hedera is still one of the fastest. It's still one of the greenest networks out there. So again, when we think about the tech stack here, just across the board, it's checking every single box, which is why I still believe almost everyone should be paying attention to what Hedera is doing, because when an enterprise or institutional player wants to tap into this next generation technology, they don't want to tap into something that has weak points. They want to make sure that they are secure across the board. And Hedera ensures that. It also goes back to what we were talking about back in 2021. We're talking about 4 years ago, almost now 5. And what we were talking about is the security mechanism behind Hedera, which was, of course, ABFT, right? Asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerance. That is the highest grade security possible, and Hedera offers it. So again, across the board, scalability, fees, confirmation time, security itself is so crucial here, but everything else just adds more to Hedera. This is also why I keep saying that Hedera is 100% next level. Now, Brady did break this fully down on exactly how this works, because again, you have all of that decentralization across the board from, what ISP or hosting they're using, but also even geographical. So again, just to summarize this, the main reason why Hedera didn't go down is because across the board, we have this distribution that's not, centralized to one name. We have all of these figures down below, roughly like 5%. Some of them are around like 6.9%, like, for example, AWS and also Azure. They're both around 6.9%. However, that's not a massive statistic like the one from, Ethereum, which was well over a quarter of the network's ISP hosting. So we love to see this. And again, it's just more confirmation of just how bullish Hedera is. Now, beyond that, we just witnessed some big updates from the Hedera ecosystem. And I want to start off with this one here from Gilmore Estates. Now, with the government shutdown still in place, it's questionable on when we are going to see a decision on a lot of these ETF filings. However, HBAR just hit a new milestone. It's now listed in 6 U.S. ETF filings, with Grayscale, Canary, Rex Osprey, and Crane shares leading the charge. Institutional adoption is fast approaching. Analysts see a 60 to 80% chance of an HBAR ETF approval by Q4 of this year. We are in Q4, so it could happen pretty quick. Hedera is no longer emerging, it's integrating. Now, I would suspect that once we see this government shutdown officially end, because this is like the biggest delay in front of us around almost everything that you can think of. Price action, ETF applications going live, all of that. Once we see that end, I really do think that we are going to see a very significant watershed moment where we just see a massive inflow of approvals around ETFs. We also see even new ETF applications. But then also, I think that the adoption around a lot of these networks and the growth around a lot of these networks is also going to significantly be impacted in a positive way as well. I don't think a lot of people realize how big of an obstacle the government shutdown is for a lot of these things around like ETF filings, for an example. And I've talked about it even with XRP as well. So once we get past that, yeah, I'm very excited about what happens after. Now, also on top of this, we've been talking a lot about Hedera's growth lately. Listen, I know that it's very easy to just look at price action and say, all right, well, Hedera sucks, for an example, right? However, when we look at the ecosystem and we look at all of the applications going live on Hedera and the growth happening around the ecosystem as well, I've watched this ecosystem become extremely populated. You guys already know we've been talking about Hedera for so long, going all the way back to 2021, and I've watched this network go from absolutely nothing to having a massive amount of projects listed on it, launched officially, and also really kind of growing in a big way. Now, also during this time, I've been putting a spotlight on dev activity, because dev activity is extremely important to focus on. We have over here from Sentiment. Here are crypto's top RWAs, real-world assets, by development. Directional indicators represent each project's ranking rise or fall since last month. Now, second on this list is Hedera. We have 214 dev activities in the last 30 days. This is stacked up against massive projects like, for example, Chainlink, Avalanche, Stellar, IOTA, Axelar, Centrifuge, Chia Network, Injective, VeChain. So again, Hedera is holding its own when it comes back to the idea of major dev activities. Now, this is pulled around GitHub activities and data just from project repositories. However, the main thing that we're focused on here is, building happening on these networks. So when it comes back to Hedera, we've been seeing so much dev activity that will lead to major growth happening in the ecosystem, in my opinion. I think that, a lot of this dev activity kind of goes unnoticed until we start to see major announcements. And so far, I really do think that we're starting to see a little bit of a major pickup happening in the network right now, because we are starting to see some fresh launches. We've also been starting to see a lot of building happening on already active projects like SocialSwap, for example, launching their mobile application. I'm very excited about that, and I think that building upon those already very successful applications is only going to lead to more success. So we love that. However, we're also starting to see the network itself create a significant push to the upside as well. Like, for example, transactions. We have over here from All In Crypto, Hedera Hashgraph, Hedera real-time TPS surged dramatically this month as DeFi on HBAR goes into overdrive. Over the last hour, TPS is up 32+%. And yeah, I have been noticing that the TPS on Hedera is starting to pick up yet again. This time around, it's not just from one major enterprise player that's testing things. And if you guys already know, you know. I'm very excited to see what happens here, but DeFi on Hedera is definitely picking up. I've been noticing this. I've been talking about it as well. You guys already know that DeFi itself is one of the biggest categories in this space. We already know that Hedera does have a lending and borrowing platform. It has a DEX built onto it. Has multiple DEXs, by the way, but we're starting to see DeFi really get hyped up and amped up on a lot of these networks, and Hedera is definitely one of them. Now, talking about that, we've talked about key pieces to the Hedera ecosystem that allows it to be a very significant project around DeFi. If we go to the DeFi side on Hedera's website, we could see exactly why Hedera is one of the best-in-class networks for DeFi applications. And it goes back to the original view of some of the efficiencies that Hedera has to offer, like, for example, the low and fixed fees, the blazing fast transactions, the immediate settlement, and even the modern development workflows. But also no MEV sandwiching, the security around DeFi itself. I mean, all of this is really going to lead into Hedera being one of the most adopted networks for DeFi. I know right now that sounds like a stretch because, again, we haven't been really witnessing a massive shift in the DeFi market for Hedera up until this point. But once we start to see some of these networks really catch on, and what I mean by that is once we start to see the inefficiencies around other larger networks, let's, kind of go back to this image here. I'm not going to say the name, but hey, once those inefficiencies start to show up, people will be looking into networks that have the best-in-class efficiencies to build DeFi applications and scalable financial use cases on. And that's where I really do think networks like Hedera are going to shine in a big way because, again, it's very simple. It doesn't take, a genius to come to the realization that, if you are an institutional player or if you are an enterprise player, it's not just about security. It's not just about the efficiencies. It's also about making sure that whatever you are building, whatever you are doing with this technology, you are getting the best tech stack. You don't want some mediocre tech stack that at some point in time, it's going to hit you're going to hit a bottleneck that's going to cause a problem with a transaction. Gas fees are going to skyrocket. You might get sandwiched. Who knows what happens, right? There's so many things that are unpredictable when utilizing some of these other networks, and that's where Hedera really comes in clutch. It's so predictable, and everything around it is providing you with an extremely efficient and smooth, process. Everything about it. I've utilized Hedera for years. I really haven't ran into a single issue when utilizing NFTs, DeFi, or anything on Hedera. So again, just overall to summarize things, number one, the Amazon cloud outage definitely highlighted the strengths of Hedera even more. Even at a time where some of the largest networks, like Ethereum, we're starting to see big issues and we're starting to see the outage affecting these networks. Hedera still continued to just become one of the most dominant networks and have its efficiencies highlighted yet again. On top of this, we're starting to see ETFs really picking up around HBAR, which is also showing us the institutional side around HBAR is really starting to, pick up and, Again, it goes back to the idea that institutional players in Wall Street want their hand in the pot too. They are seeing how bullish some of these projects are and how bullish some of these assets have been, and they want to make sure that they are jumping in and getting a piece of the pie. Beyond that, dev activity is building at a time where we're starting to see transactions also picking up in a big way. And this is all leading around DeFi, but also market expansion around newer use cases also going live on Hedera, and also just through the hackathons as well, which is bringing even more devs into the network. So overall, Hedera is still extremely bullish, even though the market is down. You don't care about the price chart. You don't care about looking at your portfolio anymore because you just know that it's not that exciting. However, I'm still extremely bullish on these projects because I don't see anything changing. I understand that the price chart might be down, but these projects like Hedera just continue to build, grow, expand, and become even more bullish, which I'm very excited about. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you